This week on Jerusalem Dateline, history in the making as Benjamin Netanyahu is set to become Israel's prime minister for the 5th time. And bittersweet for Beresheet. Israel's spacecraft orbits the moon but crash lands on the surface. Plus, a new women's group combats anti-Israel sentiment. All this and more this week on Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. Israel's Iron Man has done it again. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has won his 5th term after a hard-fought battle with blue and white leader Benny Gantz. As John Waggi explains, the winner's task will be to build a governing coalition and heal the scars from a rough campaign.
When the voting stopped Tuesday night, Benny Gantz supporters prepared for an upset in the making. Their brand new party had a narrow lead in the polls. And in the Prime Minister's camp, it was so quiet, the media far outnumbered the Prime Minister's Likud faithful. But that had all changed by the wee hours of the morning.
Although the first exit poll showed a virtual dead heat between the pro-Bibi right and the anti-Bibi left, as the night wore on, the Prime Minister's supporters grew more hopeful that Bibi would be able to form the next government and become the longest-serving leader in Israel's history.
Even after 97% of the votes were counted Wednesday, less than a percentage point separated Likud from the blue and white party.
The coalition, it's not clear yet because we need to see who are the parties that are in the game. So 2 days from now, we'll be smarter about the coalition. But one thing we know about, and for sure, Netanyahu is the next prime minister.
I intend to work quickly to establish a stable government. I want to make it clear. It will be a right-wing government, but I intend to be the prime minister of all Israeli citizens, right or left, Jews or non-Jews alike, all Israeli citizens.
Before the election, the prime minister pledged to annex Jewish communities in the West Bank and said he would not uproot any of them. Analyst Eli Priepsch says it's time.
The voters, the people, want to apply Israeli sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. There's no doubt Judea and Samaria are part of Israel, and that's the way that Israelis see it.
Netanyahu has already spoken with many probable partners in his latest coalition, almost certainly a government of the right. John Waggi, CBN News, Tel Aviv.
For more on what the results of the elections mean to Israel and the region, CBN senior editor John Waggi and CBN correspondent Julie Staal join me in our studio. John and Julie, great to be here talking about, this pivotal election in Israel's history. John, first to you. You've been covering Israeli elections since 1996. How would you characterize this election?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is that this was the election most about a person rather than any set of issues or security or anything. This was about keeping Benjamin Netanyahu in office or getting rid of him. And now we know Netanyahu's won. He's going to probably be forming a coalition in the next couple of weeks. What's the impact worldwide, regionally, John, in your mind? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is the Trump peace plan and what's going to come out sometime soon, we expect. And President Trump has signaled that he thought it was a good idea that the Israeli people had elected Netanyahu. You can imagine that over the last several months they've been working together on what is acceptable, what's not acceptable as far as Israel's concerned. So I think that's one big thing. And then just how Israel responds in a defensive manner against the threats posed everywhere, and that should be a continuation of what has been going on.
Right. Julie, what impact is this going to have here in Israel internally among Israelis?
I think really for Israelis, the government's going to pretty much stay the same. So you're going to have pretty much the same people in charge. I don't think it's going to change too much on the ground. What we might see is, for instance, Netanyahu may feel emboldened to take more steps, like if Gaza flares up, right, or different things on the border, on the northern border. I mean, now he's kind of has the backing of the people now.
Bit of a mandate?
Yeah, a mandate, really. It's all also going to depend on how these indictments go down, what's going to happen to him legally, how that's going to change things in the coming weeks and months.
But there is a divide in the country. I mean, sort of just like the United States, between the Democrats and Republicans, those for or against President Trump. Do you see some of those internal divisions here in Israel as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there were a lot of people that didn't even really care that much about Netanyahu, but wanted to stay in the right-hand camp, so they voted for him. And then there were others who voted for blue and white just because they'd had enough of Netanyahu. So I think there's a lot of division. I know a lot of Israelis were kind of hoping that Netanyahu would form a unity government with blue and white, Benny Gantz, and kind of like heal the whole thing, because the campaign was sort of so nasty and everything that they wanted to come back together, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. John, one of the big things that Netanyahu did just before the election was say that if he's elected, he's going to have Israeli sovereignty over all the Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria, or what's known as the West Bank. Do you think he's going to follow through on that?
Well, I think to the extent that he can, he will follow through on that. I think he was sending a signal that the idea that everyone has had in the past of the two-state solution based on the Oslo process, he's moved on from that. Almost everyone else has moved on from that. And I think that there will be a different configuration. I think that he will follow through on not ousting anyone from any Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria anytime soon. I don't think that's going to happen for sure.
Yeah. We know people around the world pray for Israel. We got about a minute left. Julie and John, how do you think people should be praying now for Israel going forward?
I think really that they need to pray that there's wisdom in the leadership. They need to pray for Israel's borders, for security issues. Also that really some of this rift in the country would be healed, and people would stop just fighting each other and really work on governing the country.
John, and this is prophetic as well. So what happens in Israel really affects a lot of people.
It does, and I would just add that coming from the United States and being here for the past 3 weeks, I would say that there's a real parallel between what's going on in the United States, the huge divisions there, and now we see that the opposition party says it's going to make the Knesset a battleground. And so you have this perpetual campaign going on, even though elections happened just days ago, you know, and that's troublesome. So I would say be in prayer for the leaders, and be in prayer that you know, that they can govern wisely and well in spite of all the fratricide.
Right, just like Paul said to pray for leadership, and the psalmist said to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. John, Julie, thanks a lot for your expertise and analysis, and maybe we'll see you at the next election. From elections here on Earth, we turn to outer space. Leaders in Israel's space industry hope to try again to land a spacecraft on the moon. Their first lunar craft crashed just miles away from its goal of putting down on the moon's surface. I was at the Israel Space Center when the events unfolded. Before the final descent of the spacecraft, these Israeli pioneers hoped for success.
8.5 years in the making, so many engineers, both in SpaceIL, Israel Aerospace Industries, donors, supporters, volunteers, and it's all coming down to this. This baby here is going to get to the surface of the moon. The only question is, in how many pieces?
SpaceIL's major donor, Morris Kahn, explained the name of the spacecraft.
Beresheet is the first word in our Bible. It is in the beginning. And I think that for us, this is the beginning. And for SpaceIL and for the Israel aircraft industry, this is the beginning.
We have lost communication with the spacecraft.
But on the verge of history, Israel's spacecraft, Beresheet, fell just short.
It seems that a failure in our inertial measurement unit caused a chain of events in the spacecraft avionics, which cut off the engines and caused us to lose the mission.
The attempted moon landing began as a dream by 3 Israeli engineers 8.5 years ago. Despite the failure, it still represents the epitome of Israel as the startup nation.
It's a story that shows a lot about Israel, how 3 young engineers sitting in a bar can, you know, just pull an entire country after them and make this a reality.
They want to inspire the next generation.
We've met more than 1 million kids in Israel and around the world and gave them the message that, you know, science and technology can be fun, can be cool.
Israel became only the 7th nation to put a spacecraft in lunar orbit and the first privately funded mission to the moon.
For a small country like Israel, for a small, even smaller company or association like SpaceIL, it's a huge achievement.
But my message is for the kids. This is hard. It is rocket science. Science and engineering is difficult. It doesn't always work the first time. But you have to pick yourself up
and try again.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu encouraged the space team to go on.
If at first you don't succeed, you try again.
The spacecraft carried a nano copy of the Bible on board, and before its final descent, the spacecraft took a selfie with a banner that read, "Small country, big dreams." Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Israel Space Center. Coming up, in these tense times, women from around the globe unite in support of Israel.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs, from health to entertainment, you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place, from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Check your local listings or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
This Easter, discover the origin of Passover in CBN's free guide, The Jewish Holidays. Take a biblical and historical journey through the major holidays Jews celebrate each year. Explore the festivals Jesus observed throughout his life. Learn why the holidays are so central to Jewish life and culture today. Grow in your faith. Get your free copy of The Jewish Holidays. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/The Jewish Holidays for your free guide.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Protect your sleep and live your best life with innovative information from 5 leading sleep experts.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
Discover a sleep-enhancing bedtime routine, how to put insomnia to rest, learn how to relieve pain that disturbs sleep, and much more in Protect Your Sleep.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Don't miss out on this brand new series.
While several new Democratic congresswomen attack those who support the Jewish state, one new group is taking the opposite position. Their goal is to attract Christian women to stand with Israel. They call themselves the Alliance of Christian Women for Israel and partner with the Jewish Agency.
It's a global gathering of women from around the world who have a heart for Israel, that want to stand and support the people of God to come back to their ancient homeland. And we just came to Jerusalem for our first launch to find out how we can better, more effectively help.
During their inaugural trip, they received briefings from the Israel Air Force, visited the president's residence, and experienced an absorption center for new immigrants, all to get a first-hand look at today's Israel.
We've seen the need, and the Bible tells us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, but to me, in the Hebrew mindset of that is there's always action to our prayers. So that's what we want to do.
They also came to experience the land of the Bible.
Oh my gosh, there's so much history and just so much life and love here. You can feel it from the people, you can feel it from the land, the history within the rocks. I mean, it speaks to you. It's amazing.
When you come and set foot here in Jerusalem and the Holy Land is really connecting to the scriptures, and the scripture and the Word of God just comes to life.
And each believe it's a time to stand with Israel.
As Native Americans coming from America, we are so connected with Israel. Everything that we do is kind of correlating with Israel. Our former president, Ben Chalet, was here from Navajo Nation. When he came back, he stood in our pulpit and said, everyone on the Navajo Nation needs to experience Jerusalem. Wow.
What do you think of the idea of more women coming here like this?
Oh, I think it's a must. I think that's how we encounter the Lord, as we open our heart to the place that He loves and invite Him to lead us by His Holy Spirit into an encounter. I hope more women do get to come.
Given today's rhetoric about Israel and the Jewish people, Chavez sees an opportunity.
How important it is, especially now in the movements that are going on around the world with anti-Semitism, that we stand up. We know that we have a biblical mandate as Christians all through the scripture from Genesis all the way through to support the people of God.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the Mount of Olives, Jerusalem. Up next, passing the mantle from father to daughter in one of the largest pro-Israel organizations.
A historic bond between the Jewish people and the land of Israel cannot be broken.
Now on Blu-ray or DVD, the new CBN documentary special, The Hope, The Rebirth of Israel.
History is knocking on the door. Things are changing.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/Israel The Hope to receive your copy of the CBN documentary special, The Hope, The Rebirth of Israel, for a gift of $10 or more. Now on Blu-ray or DVD.
Once he declares the state of Israel, they're all going to come after us.
Go on an extraordinary journey as Gordon Robertson explores the founding of Israel and meet the heroes who made history.
The United States recognizes the new state of Israel.
The Hope, The Rebirth of Israel can be yours on Blu-ray or DVD for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com/Israel The Hope. Call now.
Hello, I'm Dr. David Perlmutter, board-certified neurologist and #1 New York Times bestselling author. Wouldn't it be great to boost your energy, eliminate brain fog, and even reverse brain disease? Well, you can, and I'm going to show you how, along with some of the world's most well-respected brain experts in this DVD, Protect Your Brain.
Get Protect Your Brain, a free DVD only from the Christian Broadcasting Network, featuring experts on the cutting edge of neuroscience and brain health.
No matter how many times you've failed in the past, you really can do this.
In Protect Your Brain, you'll discover simple strategies to keep your brain young and healthy. Improve your memory. Discover the gut-brain connection. In Protect Your Brain, get your free copy at cbn.com or call 1-800-700-7000.
If you want to improve the quality of your life, get the DVD Protect Your Brain and get it today.
Decades ago, Rabbi Yechiel Eckstein founded the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews to build broad support for the State of Israel. Eckstein died in February, but his legacy lives on. His daughter Yael took charge of the organization. I sat down with her recently and asked about how she's doing and what she sees for the future of the organization. Yael, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people would like to know how you're doing after the passing of your father.
Leonard Cohen said, something with a crack lets the light in, and I feel like my heart's very broken. I miss my father. I still can't comprehend and internalize I'm never going to see him again or get a hug from him. But I also feel a lot of light. I feel a lot of peace. I see a lot of God's hand within the tragedy that my father didn't suffer. I feel like I got to tell him everything I wanted to tell him, how proud I am of him, how much I love him, how much I look up to him. I wish I had another day. I wish I had another year. I wish I had another 20 years. I wish I had another lifetime to be with him. But I'm just so grateful to God for everything I had for the past 34 years.
What is your dad's legacy?
It's interesting being the new president of the organization, also being his daughter. And I felt that so strongly when I was sitting Shiva, when I was mourning for him, that people would come and tell me all the legacy from the organization, people that he helped, and getting on a flight and flying to Ukraine the second the war in eastern Ukraine broke out in order to help the Jewish people there, and going and speaking at mega churches and inspiring tens of thousands of people who never heard about why they should care about Israel. But he also made a big legacy in our family, a legacy of, first and foremost, he was a father. First and foremost, he loved us and encouraged us and appreciated us and saw us, which is something that I don't think many children can say about their parents, unfortunately.
In what way do you see the work of the fellowship as prophetic?
Everything we do is prophetic. Everywhere I look, it's prophetic. From greeting Aliyah, new immigrants who are coming home to Israel from all four corners of the earth after they've survived persecution, communism, the Holocaust, that the whole world said the Jewish people will not recover from this. Suddenly we have Christians bringing from the biblical land of the north Jewish people on wings of eagles home to Israel. That's prophecy. That's what Isaiah and Jeremiah, this is what they saw 2,000 years ago. They were having the visions of us sitting here in Jerusalem.
What was his relationship with Pat Robertson?
He loved him from the very, very beginning. Pat Robertson, along with many others like Pat Boone and Jack Hayford and many others, John Hagee. But the way that Pat Robertson was just passionate about it, it seemed like he was praying for this, and God sent my father as the answer to prayers, because he got it before my father even developed the whole idea.
And what do you see going forward for the fellowship?
We have a lot of work, but we also have a lot of very strong foundations. The day that my father passed away and we were burying him, there was an Aliyah flight landing in Israel. Since my father's death, not one elderly who was expecting food didn't get food, not one orphan didn't get clothing. Aliyah has only continued even stronger. That we have an operational model that works. And dare I say, thank God it works without my father. But in the past 3 years, he said, Yael, you're the visionary now. You create the projects, you identify the need.
Talk about the atmosphere we're in right now. It seems like anti-Semitism is growing, even in the United States, and it's perhaps especially in the United States. How does the fellowship fit into this new atmosphere?
It's in the American government. It's no longer fringe. There's always been a fringe of anti-Semitism in America. You've always had the KKK, but they were taboo. They were ostracized. What's happening now is a new age intellectual anti-Semitism that's fooling people, that they're aligned with America's values of freedom, when in reality they are creating the exact opposite atmosphere. It's terrifying. And maybe for the first time, Christians are just as at risk as the Jews. We're in the same boat. It's very clear that we are fighting a war of light versus darkness, good versus bad, and everyone's at risk of falling, that we need to stand together.
Finally, Yael, how can people pray for you?
I've gotten through this time because of the prayers of millions of people, and I have no way to say thank you enough for those prayers, for me, for the ministry. I want to have a pure heart, prayer for a pure heart, that I could actually hear God speaking and see Him working through me.
Well, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people praying for you, Yael, as the future goes on. Thank you very much. Still ahead, one of the most contested sites in the world debuts a new photo exhibit in Jerusalem's Old City.
Prophecy thousands of years old.
We were called to be a light to the world.
Being fulfilled today. Discover how. Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life. Just call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he has, which color he is, this is what I'm doing.
See how the people of Israel are fulfilling prophecy.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
By sharing their knowledge.
In Africa, in Asia, in South America, in East Europe.
And their love.
This is how we work. This is us.
Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
How'd you like to get a redo on your health, on your body, on your arteries, so you could have the energy you had 20 years ago? The great news is you can. I'm Dr. Mike Roizen, chair of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. But even better than having to read all that, you can listen to this DVD and watch it. Protect your heart? Yes, you can. Here's how.
Go to CBN.com or call 1-800-700-7000 for your free copy of Protect Your Heart. Let the medical experts show you their new discoveries on how to avoid heart disease and even reverse it. Easy steps to uncover the hidden dangers in your medicine cabinet, reduce stress, and get a complete do-over for your health. Call 1-800-700-7000. That's 1-800-700-7000. Or go to CBN.com to claim your free copy of Protect Your Heart.
The Temple Mount is one of the world's most contested and photographed pieces of real estate. That's why it's the theme of a unique exhibit in Jerusalem's Old City. The Mount follows the history of the holy site from the first photos almost 200 years ago to the selfie of today. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Staal has that story.
We first learn of the Temple Mount in Genesis some 4,000 years ago.
For the Jews, it's the place that Abraham binned in Isaac. It's the place that the word create from. It's the place of Holy of Holies inside of the temple. And for the Muslims, this will be the place that Muhammad rises up to heaven.
The Temple Mount is known in Arabic as Al-Haram al-Sharif, the site of 2 consecutive Jewish temples in Bible times. It currently hosts the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the iconic Golden Dome of the Rock.
The Temple Mount is the most interesting site in Jerusalem. It's the heart of the city, and we are the Museum of the History of Jerusalem.
Eilat Lieber is director of the Tower of David Museum that put together the Mount, the Haram al-Sharif exhibit. It chronicles the modern history of the Temple Mount since the beginning of photography here in 1839.
More and more visitors are very interesting in the story of the Temple Mount, since some of them cannot visit this site from different reasons. Some of them from religious reasons, some of them are just afraid.
The exhibit opens with a live cam of the Temple Mount.
We have a live all the time, so in a way you can say from the daguerreotype to the selfie. Like you have 180 years of photography in this exhibition.
It includes photos like this one of the Omar Mosque, taken around 1860. The first aerial shot taken from a Zeppelin in 1931, and one of the first videos ever on the site. Chief curator of the exhibit, Dr. Shimon Lev, said it was difficult to put together the exhibit in a balanced way.
My idea was not to ignore any of the sensitive or explosive issues and subject of this project, just to put it in a chronological, how it's developed to become the core or the center or the foundation stone, in a way, of the conflict which involved religion and nationalism and also other aspects.
Lieber says their mission is to bring people in the heart of the conflict together, help them to get to know one another, and maybe change the discussion about the disputed site. Julie Staal, CBN News, Jerusalem.
From the volatile Temple Mount to a pivotal election and an heroic attempt to land on the moon, it's been quite a week here in Israel. Please continue to pray, as the psalmist said, for the peace of Jerusalem. That's all for this edition. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.